This week on Art on the Air, our 300th episode features retro-futuristic, surrealistic, nostalgic, whimsical artist Gavin Ottesin, whose work is inspired by fantasy and science fiction. Next, Toronto-based artist Sasha Pierce, whose geometric-inspired tessellations inform her work. Our spotlights on Memorial Opera House's Penguin Project production of High School Musical Junior and other fall events.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. I'd like to welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight from the Memorial Opera House, and she's taking care of all the events coordination with all the upcoming things here in August and into the fall. Adrienne Bansimer, welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again.
You have some things come up, and we'll touch on the renovation, which also caused, you can talk about, a cancellation that came as a result of that. But nevertheless, the Penguin Project is the next big thing coming up. So first of all, give us the background of Penguin Project and then what you have actually in the offing here in August.
Absolutely. So Penguin Project is a once-a-year project that basically turns into a magical and touching celebration of the human spirit. Numerous theaters across the country actually do this, and basically what it is it is a modified version of a well-known Broadway musical, and those productions are unique because all of the roles are filled by young artists with either developmental disabilities, including Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, visual and hearing impairment, and any other neurological disorders. So they basically are joined on stage by a dedicated group of what we call peer mentors, and they're usually children of the same age without a disability who have volunteered to work side by side with them. And through 4 months of rehearsals and through the final performance, we provide them access to community theater. And the Penguin Project basically demonstrates that the special challenges of a disability should not handicap a person's ability to participate in life's experiences. So they get to participate in being part of a theater, and it's just a magical event to watch. And this year's performance will be High School Musical Junior, and they're going to be performing, which is one of my favorite. It's great. Will be performed this year at Hebron High School, and that's going to be Friday, August 9th and Saturday, August 10th. And tickets are already available and ready to go. All you have to do is go to memorialoperahouse.com to get some more information about those.
So pricing for groups over 10, right?
Absolutely. Definitely special pricing for groups over 10. Just reach out to our box office and they'll be more than happy to set you up.
How many people, students of both the ones that you're helping and the helpers, are involved in this production?
In this production, I think that there's probably close to 30 involved. It's a pretty large cast between, the peers and then the actual penguins, as we refer to them. I think there's almost 30 children involved this season.
And how long have you been in rehearsal?
They have been in rehearsal already for going on almost 3 months. So, and if you follow any of our social medias, there's some clips on there of them practicing and performing and dancing and basically just showing how much they actually love being involved with this program.
Now, you had a casualty in terms of a show that you were going to do as a result of the renovations. Tell us about that, and then maybe tell us a little bit how the renovations are going.
So yeah, we unfortunately had to pull one of our shows back. So Guys and Dolls. So if for some reason somebody has not talked to the box office, they need to do so pretty quickly so we can get them moved to another show or figure that out. But due to us being down for renovations, unfortunately, we had to make that tough decision of limiting a show. But as far as renovations, I actually got to go over there this morning and take a sneak peek, and it is amazing. It's so pretty in there. Some of the colors that they've chosen and the decorations, and there are people working all over that building. So it's going to be amazing to watch and see as it progresses. So it's a little scary. It was very detrimental, scary at the very beginning because unfortunately, there's a lot of destruction before the new construction can begin. But I think it's going to be great and a beautiful, beautiful setting once it's all set and ready to go.
So exciting.
Now, your August Cabaret, that also, you were doing that, I think, the American Legion, and I think you had a June one. So, and I don't know how July went, or tell us a little bit about that.
So the August Cabaret is still in the works. July, we had a slight hiccup, and unfortunately, we had to sort of kind of temporarily put a hold on that. But August is good, and that's going to be Songs and Sounds of Broadway. So they're working on that and practicing, and then we're just getting ready for auditions coming up in September. Scrooged, we're going to be doing Scrooged for Christmas, so that's first week or second week of September, September 9th through the 11th. They'll be holding Scrooged auditions, and there's information about that online as well. So people can submit online auditions as well. And then we are planning for our first big event of the year, which is our Laugh for Life comedy event. And we're bringing in some pretty big comedians, and that's for suicide prevention and awareness. It's a great fundraiser and a great way to reopen the Opera House.
Great. In September, you have Frankenstein, or Young Frankenstein, still scheduled, I believe.
Oh, yeah. End of September, Young Frankenstein will begin. So tickets are also on sale for that. And the first show of that will be Thursday, September 26th. So, and that'll run a traditional 3 weeks. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 3 weeks in a row.
And one of the concerts you have in our last minute here is the Ultimate Doors. When is that?
Ultimate Doors are going to be in November. Saturday, November 9th, and that's a pretty big show. So it's a national group, and they travel all over the United States and put on, an absolute huge Doors concert, basically. So we're looking real forward to that. Something new for us.
Well, it sounds like you're getting back on your feet. Memorial Opera House still under renovation, but you can see the Penguin Project doing high school musical junior August 9th and 10th. That's at Hebron High School Auditorium. You can get tickets through your box office. Adrienne Bessemer, thank you so much for coming on Art in the Air Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, Adrienne.
And a Spotlight Extra. The Shirley Hines Land Trust Nature in Arts program has 2 free events on August 3rd with South Bend Museum of Art, Leidick Bog. More information at hinestrust.org/nature-in-the-arts. Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete 1-hour program on Lakeshore Public Media is brought to you by McCauley Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts.
This is Mary Clark, the author of Dandelion Roots Run Deep, and you are listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and WVLP 103.1 FM.
We would like to welcome Gavin Ottesin to Art on the Air. Gavin is an independent artist painting in a fantastical style. He employs various mediums, including gouache, oil, acrylic, and digital paints. His art is stylistic in nature with notes of retro-futurism, surrealism, nostalgia, and whimsy, science fiction, Literature, animated films, and mid-century aesthetics are the foremost inspirations for his paintings. He strives to imbue all of his work with a sense of wonder, optimism, inclusion, and kindness. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Gavin. It's really fantastic meeting you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And it's great to have you on board. And our audience always wants to know the background of our guests, their origin story. And I think you have an interesting one from looking at your bio, but tell us about that, how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey, both artistically and geographically for me. I was actually born and raised in Utah, in the mountains, and have been doing art from a very, very early age, as early as I can remember. Was just interested in drawing and creating things. I really gravitated first towards drawing and then painting. But, from an early age, my parents were really supportive of it and put me in art classes and sent me to art summer camps and, really supported it. So I'm very grateful for that. And so I've always been doing creative things. All the way through high school, was always taking as many art classes as I could. And then really fell in love with illustrative kind of commercial style art in high school back in the 90s. I'm from the class of 96. And that's where I really fell in love with kind of the illustrative side of things. From there, I did go to college and got a graphic design degree. Most of those graphic design principles are now completely obsolete, and I don't employ them much anymore. Yeah, so I graduated with a graphic design degree and didn't really use it much. I always felt the pull back toward traditional arts, the drawing and the painting that I originally fell in love with as a small child. So I went to college in Arizona, and then I moved from there to Texas. And in Texas, I started a mural painting business where I was painting large scale commercial and residential murals around the north of Dallas, in that area. And then, life kind of happened and things, drifted by for many, many years. And I never really did much with art until I met my wife and slowly began to get back into art as an adult. And in the last couple of years, I'm 45 now, and in the last couple of years, I've really felt like I've begun to understand who I am as an artist and what I want to do, and really kind of have found my path. And I say that because I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to know what they're doing, as soon as they graduate or as soon as they're just stepping out into the world. And it took me a long time, but now I am completely fulfilled and am inspired and happy doing the art that I'm doing. So it's been kind of a long, trek of starting in art and then kind of leaving art and then coming back to art. But along the way, I've lived in 6 different states, all 4 time zones on the mainland. And now I live right on the border of Ohio and Indiana in a small little rural town in a tiny house on wheels with my wife. And we have a little room in our tiny house that's just our office and studio. And that's where I spend 8 to 10 hours of every single day of my life creating art. And it's kind of like our little oasis and our little paradise.
What was that moment? So I think if I remember, you were in Texas and then you brought your wife in. And so what was that moment that threw you into the arts again?
A lot of it was just finally getting to a point where I felt like I had some time to art again. For a long time, I let work and career get in the way, and just life in general, trying to, be social and, live a life. And my wife kept saying, you've got this talent. You're clearly talented. And she would always beg me to draw her little doodles and stuff like that. And, eventually it just became a larger and larger and larger piece of my life again, until it got to the point where it was during the pandemic that we decided. We were living in Southern California at the time. And during the pandemic, we had tried to make my art like a side stream of income and some sort of a small business. And we decided, look, let's just jump all in. The world is flipped upside down right now. Let's just jump all in. So we moved from Southern California, where we had a huge apartment for a huge amount of rent. And we decided, well, let's just build a tiny home on wheels, lower our cost of living, and go all in on art. And we did that in 2021 and have basically just not looked back since then. So it was kind of a gradual thing. I don't know that it was one single moment, but there were some kind of tentpole moments along the way. And that decision we made during the pandemic was like the major turning point for me.
I see from your biography, and you kind of already, that Charlie, your wife, is your chief support officer, art director, and web manager. So you really, truly are in a partnership with her as far as making this happen.
Absolutely. I obviously am the artist and I create the art, but whenever I talk about anything that we do, whether it's the art festivals and art fairs, any single sale we make, any move we make whatsoever as this business that we've created, I always say we, because she is absolutely integral and has helped me, from a layman's standpoint. She's not schooled in art in any way, but she's been the voice of reason and the person that has reined me in, so to speak, on things like, when a piece is actually finished. That's something artists struggle with, because a lot of us will see something in a painting that always needs to be touched up, that can always be made a little better. And, so she's great at things like that. And she has really helped me gain perspective on how my art is viewed from the outside, which is also very hard for an artist. So, yeah, I give her all those titles because she has absolutely earned them and deserves so much credit for any, small success we've been able to gather.
It's nobody realizes, they see the end product. You're all happy at the art show, but they don't know what goes into getting there and setting up and smiling for all those hours. And it's rough.
That is absolutely true. We just finished an art show in Indianapolis, and it was a hot weekend, and the driving there and the unloading your car, the setting it all up, the zhuzhing of your displays and making it look pretty so that when the guests flood in, it looks great. And then the undoing of all of that at the end. It is a monumental amount of work. And, you give up your weekend doing it, and, it takes a toll physically and kind of emotionally sometimes too. But, we do it so that we can connect with people and, tell the story of my art. It's the best way we've found to get my art in front of people and have those interactions and see those responses.
Yeah, it's a beautiful immediate reaction, and it's just the energy is, wow, the energy is so beautiful, especially when you have that connection.
So the tiny house on wheels, does that go with you to these art shows, or does that stay and then you take another place? Or I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our tiny house on wheels is stationary. Okay. It's not quite small enough that it would really be feasible to, drag it around from place to place. It's a 26-foot tiny house on wheels, so not real small. It's not one of the bigger ones, but it's not a real small one either. And we actually live in a tiny house village. That's kind of how we ended up in Ohio, because they had a village with some spots open when we were building ours. And it has infrastructure, like each lot has built-in sewer hookups and stuff like that. So, yeah, it sits in place. Also, we have a very tiny car. It's a little hatchback Toyota Yaris. So the magic happens when we take an entire 10 by 10 outdoor booth art fair setup and dismantle it and put it all in that tiny car along with two full-size humans.
Oh my gosh. Yes, the Yaris is a little tiny car, that's for sure.
Yep. So we've had to get real creative and real inventive on our displays and, basically just how to pack that thing perfectly every time.
Jenga.
Yeah, that sounds great. So tell us a little bit about, I'm looking at your designs here, and you have like acrylic oil paintings and Z-clay and digital. So you work in different methods, but tell us about each one of those and, how you, and some of your subjects, which are very surreal at times and interesting.
Yeah, so I work mostly today, I work in gouache. And that's not something that a lot of fine artists do. It's not incredibly common, but it's the medium that has ultimately ended up making the most sense that my brain can unpack when I'm trying to create a piece and figure out how to make it work. Gouache has become really my mainstay, but I also do the other mediums, which you mentioned. And, until recently, I also did digital painting. And I did that, for about the last 7 years or so in an effort to kind of facilitate the ease of making prints of my work, because, you don't have to do an extra photography or scan of your work. It's ready-made for prints. But with the onset of AI and that conversation, which is roiling on all the social medias these days, I really wanted to differentiate myself as far as I could from any sort of machine-created artwork. And so I've kind of ditched digital art because of that, to kind of differentiate myself from that. And then oil is still, honestly, I feel like I'm really early in my oil journey. I only started painting oils in the last about year, and I've only successfully completed 2 oil paintings that I'm actually three oil paintings that I'm really happy with. So I'm still a novice when it comes to oil, and I don't mind admitting that. I feel like a complete rookie, but I'm really enjoying the exploration of that as a medium. Now, acrylic is the one I've used the most, and that goes way back to, when I was a kid and all I was buying is craft store paints, those are all acrylic. And then I moved into the phase where I was painting murals, and all of those were done in acrylic. So I've painted acrylic most of my life, but with my discovery of my love of gouache and with my new kind of path with oil, I've kind of let acrylic drift off to the wayside as well. So there are some still acrylic things that I have hanging around in my catalog. But when I tell people today what type of an artist I am, I tell them really I'm a gouache painter and a burgeoning oil painter, I guess.
Actually, where I am too, I don't really use acrylic. I like gouache, and I'm also just started oil painting.
Okay, cool.
Right before the beginning of the pandemic.
Nice.
Well, explain what gouache is for our uninitiated people that are not necessarily artists.
Sure. So the short answer that I give at the art festivals when people inevitably ask is that it's a water-based medium that kind of sits on the spectrum right between watercolor and acrylic, and it kind of shares properties of both. So a lot of people actually refer to it as opaque watercolor because it's really very similar to watercolor, except that it is much more highly pigmented. So it allows you to get really bright, bold, saturated colors and deep, dark, saturated, dark colors, and you can create a lot of contrast with it. Oftentimes with watercolor, if you want a deep black, you got to apply some ink or some, a lot of people do a watercolor painting and then add some gouache to it. I paint very bold, punchy themes. Most of what I do, as you referenced a moment ago, is surrealistic. I'm very inspired by science fiction and fantasy, and those are the subject matters of most of my paintings. So really bold, fantastical subject matters. So gouache really hits the sweet spot for me in those colors and contrasts that you're able to come up with.
And your sizes of your pieces, I noticed a lot of them are square.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've played with format a lot over the years, but there's something magical about the challenge of the square format to me. There's a natural tendency for us to want to do a panoramic or a tall oriented piece. Most art in the art world is not square, but really with the advent of Instagram is where I kind of got stuck on the square originally. And I've always loved album cover art, and I've always been a record collector, and looking at those compositionally, it's always fascinating to me to see where the balance lies in a perfect square. And I don't know, I've just really honed in on that, and that has become my format for everything that I do. Now, the size, most of my paintings are rather small. I wouldn't necessarily call them miniature, but they're definitely on the small end. And that's really just the limitations of the space in which we live, because our house is only about 280 square feet total. Wow. And so I have to inventory all of my prints and paintings, here in the house somewhere. So I can't do, 30 by 30 canvases. It's just physically not possible.
And I noticed that some of the pieces are you talk about surrealism and science fiction. I'm looking at one right now. It's called Islands of Ice, and you have a rocket ship floating on a piece of ice. Looks like it's surrounding a planet. Where do you get your ideas from? Things you see just out of your own head?
Yeah, I have always been an avid reader. My wife and I are both bibliophiles, and my genre of choice from an early age has always been science fiction. So the imagery that comes to mind is often from the stories that I read. A lot of times, because of what I read is from the mid-20th century, it's also the cover art from those books, whether they're novels or short story collections. The paintings and artists that they used to employ at those publishing companies were incredible, and they inspire me every day. And everywhere we go, we look for books, and really that's probably the greatest source of inspiration for me is literature.
Favorite science fiction author?
I knew you were going to ask me that. It's an impossible question, and I'd say it changes every time I get asked because I'm reading something new. But I'd say right now it's probably Arthur C. Clarke.
One of mine also.
Yeah.
Love that. And I also like Heinlein's, especially I love his book, one, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. That's a really interesting story. So,
yeah, he's definitely one of those biggies. I think early on, especially for visual imagery, I would have said Ray Bradbury as well. He's such a visual poet with the way he stylizes his prose, and you can't go wrong with any of these, Mount Rushmore sci-fi writers of the 20th century.
I agree.
Some of the paintings remind me of like John Christopher's early books too. I mean, the paintings are very evocative if you read science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, like when you're going into your studio, I mean, do you wake up with your knowing where you're going to be? Do you get the inspiration when you're sitting in front of the canvas? Do you have a portfolio of ideas?
Yeah, most of my idea generation happens in my sketchbook. I'm pretty old school traditional that way. I just am always blasting ideas out onto my sketchbook pages, sketching little vignettes on the daily. And the ones that just kind of pop out to me that jump off the page are the ones that I turn into paintings. And I do a pretty literal translation from sketchbook to the canvas as far as the blocking and the staging and, compositional. And then from there, I just kind of let the paint, let it come alive as it comes alive. And sometimes I make changes, but I don't feel like I'm ever short of ideas. Which is a wonderful thing to have. I don't know. I can endlessly be inspired by science fiction, fantasy, surrealist ideas, and so they just pour out of me. It's the easy way to say it, I guess.
Any projects that you are coming up that you want to work on, like inspired by science fiction?
I've talked to a couple of people recently that are musicians that are looking for album covers. That is always something that I've never had the chance to do, that I've always wanted to do. So if one of those projects ends up coming to fruition, I will be over the moon. And really, other than that, I just want to paint every day. Nothing specific. I just want to paint.
No agenda each day. So you have some events coming up. This, of course, is going to be airing in early August. What kinds of shows you might have coming up later in the late summer, early fall?
Yeah, so we have put together a calendar of events for the year, and I'm basically going to be doing an art festival or an art fair every other weekend for the entire year through December. So the last part of the year, there's still some things we're waiting to hear back on, but I've got shows in Indiana, shows in Michigan, shows in Ohio, and we're hopeful for one in Kentucky. So this entire region will be canvassing and visiting and bringing my art to a town near you, hopefully soon.
That sounds great. Well, Gavin, tell how people can find you online and also find your schedule online and also information about you.
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's gavinottesinart.com. And on that website is my full catalog of available art. But it also does have a tab for events. My wife keeps very good upkeep of that. And so if you're interested to know where I'm going to be, when I'm going to be there, that will be a good place to find it. And I'm on all the major social medias at Gavin Ottesin Art. So I like to keep it simple. It's Gavin Ottesin Art basically anywhere.
That sounds great. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show, and a shout out to Charlie, the one who really manages the whole thing here. GavinOttesinArt.com. That's GavinOttesinArt.com. And that's Gavin Ottesin. Thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air, sharing your art journey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Art on the Air listeners, do you have a suggestion for a possible guest on our show? Whether it's an artist, musician, author, gallery, theater, concert, or some other artistic endeavor that you are aware of, or a topic of interest to our listeners. Email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. Did you know that you can also listen to Art on the Air anytime as a podcast at Lakeshore Public Media's website, through Lakeshore's app, or from NPR? Plus, it's available on demand from your favorite podcast website, including TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and many more. If you have a smart speaker like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, just tell to play Art on the Air to hear the latest episode.
This is Emily Yanez, Executive Director for the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
We are pleased to welcome Sasha Pierce to Art on the Air. Sasha is involved in many disciplines that all inform and complement each other. She's an international award-winning painter, plus also travels many healing forms, including meditation, Reiki, shamanic healing, yoga, and she guides ceremonies. Her paintings are deceptive, optical, mathematic, geometric wonders of forms, tessellations rich with textures and intricate colors, which we're thrilled to talk to you about today. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Sasha. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you. Hello.
Well, Sasha, we always like to explore the background of our guests and kind of find out all about them, I call it their origin story. So we'll say how you got from where you were to where you're now. So tell us all about Sasha.
Okay, great. So I was born in Guelph in Canada, which is about an hour and a half away from Toronto, depending on traffic. And I had a wonderful childhood. I was always interested in art and material, fabric. I remember I was put into French school when I was young. So my first experience with school was a little bit overwhelming. And I remember I didn't know French. It was really difficult. So I would always gravitate towards the art. There was this great big easel in the room. So I feel like I learned art. I was attracted to art really young. Color, because it didn't need language. And so, and then I continued to do art in high school. I did my Bachelor of Arts degree at Guelph. So I stayed in my hometown for school. I took some time off and I started my master's 5 years later at University of Waterloo. Not too far away from Guelph. And so I was there. Always very intuitive artist and always interested in pattern, math. I did struggle a little bit. The arts is hard in terms of motivation and where you're going. And so there were times in my life where I have taken a step back. So the 5 years, there was a little bit of a struggle of working and not really knowing what I was doing. But then when I was in school, I did well. And then after I moved to Toronto and I started to show just at small galleries, and then some bigger galleries took a chance on me. And yeah, so that's how I got to where I am now.
So, Sasha, in those early experiences, what type of work were you drawn to? What were you doing? What were you first exploring?
In my undergrad, I right away, there was always a flatness that I enjoyed to the work that I was doing. And I remember always trying to mimic the softness of fabric. So there was something about the fabric that always attracted me, although I was never wanting to use fabric necessarily, but just that reproducing the softness. So there's a softness has always been a big part of my work.
Well, what about pre-undergrad? I'm talking elementary school.
Oh, elementary school. Yeah.
High school. What were you doing then? What were your interests?
Yeah, I did more figurative work, but I remember the moments that I liked the most on my work were painting the textiles or painting ceramics. So early on, I kind of was really interested in texture and pattern. So I could even tell from there. It wasn't so I wasn't doing abstract work. It wasn't until university that my work started to get abstract. But definitely the elements that I enjoyed the most were the more abstract elements.
So how do you start a piece? And, they're very intricate and everything, but what like a more traditional, painter, for example, might take a sketch outdoors of a scene or of a person or whatever. What's your origin and how you develop a piece?
Yeah, so I actually work from pattern. So there's this incredible encyclopedia of tiling that I've created a lot of work off of. And so I'll kind of zoom in on a part and then I try to do something with it. Usually there's, for a lot of the time, there's been a vanishing point in my work. So it's I'm taking a pattern and I'm trying to figure out where I should put the vanishing point and how it should go to the vanishing point. And there's systems that I use. And so it's very arbitrary where I will put the point, but there's it's the intuition in me that is okay, I want that there and this works here. And so there's within the composition. And then, so usually I start from cropping from the computer and then I'll print it out and then start to layer color on the computer. Right now I'm actually working on one starting with the color in the computer, because I'm kind of interested how that could play out. And I'm doing a little bit less of the vanishing point. So right now I feel like my career is very much in transition, where I've had a certain number of bodies of work, and I want to shift a little. So yeah, it's definitely a transition right now.
That's interesting, because this might be one of those impossible to answer questions, since the answer is probably most likely ephemeral. But can you pick at least like one of the jumps or transitions from one body of work to the next? Like, what was that moment that sparks the leap to the next iteration of your work? Because I've noticed it as I researched your career, there are obvious jumps, and I'm just wondering what possibly is the thing that says, okay, it's time to do the next thing.
I spent a lot of time squeezing paint out of little plastic bags and making it look like thread, so that a lot of my work, my large body of work, has looked like that. There's been jumps within that work itself, and I think it just it kind of plays itself out, even though I do feel like there's increments always in the work. And so, but I'll just, so it's just ideas that come for the next work. And sometimes those ideas are quite a large leap. But the most recent one I would say is, and I still do a little bit of oil, but I've really reduced my oil. Just because I'm not as interested in being exposed to oil as much as I was before. I live and work at home, and so I just don't want to be breathing in the oil fumes all the time. So right now I'm really interested in watercolor, and so I've been doing a series of watercolor on gouache works, and there's been little jumps in that, but now I'm doing a big jump. It just depends on, because I wanted to go a little bit bigger, and then I wanted to change the idea of the vanishing point in the composition. So
yeah, they seem to go from patterns, but then like a recent body of work, they just kind of reminded me of kind of galactic astrology almost, like renderings, like it's your map to the stars or something. The paintings are so visually dense, but they almost sort of spin off the canvas and have like this intrinsic lightness to them, even though you can see that they're thick with paint. So like they're visually very heavy. I don't know. It's quite remarkable.
Thank you. Yeah. One thing that I tend to do, I love the hand drawn and the intensity. So that's definitely, that intensity is always in my work. This one work that I'm working on is it's just right next to me. I won't talk about it because you can't see it on the radio, but it just is extremely labor intensive. And I don't know, for some reason, I was looking up Bridget Riley this morning, just because she is an inspiration. But it's so interesting, like she decided early on that she wasn't going to paint, that her assistants would do the paint. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so smart. But at the same time, it's that joy of painting that I love so much. So there is a very interesting relationship to process in my work. But sometimes it's so much that I wonder what I'm doing to myself. So, I think of myself as an endurance runner when it comes to paint. That I have an idea and I just want to execute it, and even if it's going to take months and months and months, I just have to execute it.
With the gouache and watercolor, then are you transitioning away from the heavy texture then, or are you?
Yeah, there's a series on my website, like works on paper, that kind of fit more into the oil paintings. So I had a show, my last show at Zalucky, it had a couple of oil paintings and the rest were works on paper. But there's still an intensity to the works on paper. And so I think kind of what you described, like this intensity, but there's still lightness. That I think I'm still going for that, but with the less of the heaviness of the paint.
That will, because you said that it takes a month to 2 months to do a work. So with the new one, you should be able to, I mean, that will be greatly reduced, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the geometry is really small on the one that I'm currently working on. And I'm really excited to make the geometry a little larger. So that will make it like the works that come after this one. So, and once again, I feel like I'm at that experimental stage of like, okay, where is this going? Where is it taking me? But I'm also trying to work larger as well, a little larger. So my oil paintings were, well, actually the last one I did, that Richard Heller gallery, it showed there was quite large for my works, because even my oil paintings are extremely labor intensive to create. They would take, like, I would say at least 2 months to make them. So yeah, it's always been part of my career, and but I still feel like I can really get the texture with the watercolor as well.
You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, on WVLP 103.1 FM. So going back to the textural stuff, so as you're working on it, it stays wet. So at some point, is part of that 2 months letting it kind of solidify a bit before you continue on? Or do you just, like, line by line, you just forge on?
So with that, it was the oil paintings, I have to be extremely careful how I create them, and I go around in a circle so that my arm doesn't get into the paint. So it was continuous. By the time I would get to close a circle, then the work would be dry on the other side. But yeah, I would go around, and it was a process, but I had to be really careful, make sure, you know, I wasn't putting an elbow in it, and with the work that I'm doing now, because it's watercolor, of course it dries really quickly, but it's really hard to get watercolor to be, to act like oil, like those crisp edges. So, but I think I like the challenge in that, of trying to get the precision, even though it's impossible to be that precise.
Is there any early influences, people that you admired in their art in college or even post-college that you say, oh, I really enjoy, and whoever that is and whatever they do?
Yeah. So some artist that I always enjoyed was Thomas Apps, who won the Turner Prize a number of years ago, German artist but lives in London. There is another artist, I had her, Nasreen Mohammadi. She was, she's passed away, but she did a lot of line drawings that I really liked. And I think I also like, there is something about the labor. I remember going to the Venice Biennale, and then there was this one artist who did extremely laborious drawings with all kinds of color, and unfortunately I think of his work, but I don't remember his name, but that work has kind of come up recently, thinking about what I'm doing right now. Yeah, there's all kinds of artists. Of course, I like artists who do nothing like I do, like video artists. Yeah, I can't, like Bruce Nauman, like conceptual artists. There's lots of great artists in Toronto.
Yep. There are. Agnes Martin, another grid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I went to see her work. I did a residency in New Mexico, and she has that room dedicated to her work. And there is a softness that I like in her work that I'm often thinking of, and the repetition. So yeah, she's been a big influence on my work, the minimalism of her work.
Yeah, the softness reminds me of like Japanese textiles almost. It's just really beautiful.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
What advice would you have for a young budding artist, putting on your MFA hat for a moment and then someone coming up, and of course they may do something completely different from you, but what advice do you have for a budding artist?
Good question. I think the reason why I've had a lot of success is to like listen to my intuition when I do the work, make the best work that I can, that the person can. Keep trying. I think keep trying, like just, and not get stuck on like, oh, this work is going to be the work that will go out there and get me some attention. I actually think that if you're like, it's great to, be proud of what you do, but I think if you keep moving, something will catch someone's eye and you'll get some attention that way. So to kind of play the long game and to be healthy. Like I haven't talked about my healing path that Esther talked about, but like taking time to have a life-work balance. I think when I was young, I wasn't always the best. I think that there was a certain escape that I was going into my art, and I feel like that's extremely important because, I just personally think, just the way that I want to live the life. Of course, other people can live differently, but I think it's really healthy to think of the long game and to just keep going at it, even if you have an audience of your cat. So just keep going, and then eventually it will grow, but you start small. And then, because if you have expectations that are just so big, you'll just be frustrated the whole time. So just the lower expectations and just keep moving, keep creating work.
So Sasha, when did yoga, Reiki, and meditation enter your life, and at what point were you in your art career?
It was later on. I was having a bit more like I had a little bit more money, and then I wanted to invest it in myself. And I was always interested in meditation, and then so there's the whole career out of that as well. But it has really complemented because I don't teach art, so I feel like it's a way of working with people to listen to like their inner guidance. So it's kind of the advice that I would give a young artist is also the advice that I would give to someone who is doing more alternative therapies.
No, I was thinking because you've used the word intuitive a lot, and so I know that honoring like the Reiki and the meditation opens you up to being more intuitive, and so that's why I was really curious as to where you were in your artistic career when that became more prominent in your life.
That's true. I would say when I was younger, that I always did have this intuitive knowing, but it was a way of deepening into it in these other modalities. But it is true, I just listened to what I was being given or guided to do, and I still do that, and it's a big part of my work. And I like other artists who they like channel. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm channeling, but I'm listening. So it's like listening to what sparks are coming.
Is there some aspect of art that you would like to pursue outside of your normal thing, like I want to get back to figurative or something? Is there something else like that you would like to try?
I think like a little bit more play. I'm doing a workshop. It's like a residency in Ontario coming up in August. And it's going to be playing with watercolor, and it's called Waterways. It's called at the Dimension Retreat. So I'm really excited to just gather a group of people together and play with watercolors, be inspired by nature. And yeah, maybe go a little bit more figurative or whatever calls me, but like the idea of doing it in a group. I love that, and I can't wait to do that retreat.
Well, we just have 1 minute left here. I'm going to give you a chance to have people view your work online, also contact you about your meditation and things like that. And so how can the people find you, contact you, and reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can visit my website, sashapierce.ca. And there's 2 sections to my website, my art and also meditation for creatives. And you can find a lot of information about that. You can email me if you have any questions. And then on my art side of the website, upcoming exhibitions will be posted once things are confirmed.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you coming on Art on the Air. That's Sasha Pierce. Again, the website is sashapierce.ca, and you can find out information all about her. And if you want to contact her about both her art and meditation, Sasha, thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air and sharing your art journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a complete pleasure.
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at WVLP.org. If you have a smart speaker like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, just tell it to play Art on the Air to hear the latest episode. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operation for Lakeshore Public Media, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And for WVLP, Walt Reidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.